If you've ever found yourself just completely lost in a relationship, feeling dizzy and confused by the constant ups and downs, I want you to think of this as your map out. We're going to pull back the curtain on the very predictable psychological playbook that defines narcissistic abuse. The goal here is to move you from that fog of self-doubt into a place of real, solid clarity.
We're starting right here for a very important reason. Because this, right here, is the story that gets left behind in your head, isn't it? It's like a splinter you just can't quite reach. The narrative that somehow you were the problem, that you were too much or not enough. Well, today, we're going to take that story apart, piece by piece, and show you exactly why every single part of it is a lie.
You know, every story has a beginning. And in this particular kind of story, the beginning often feels like this whirlwind epic romance. But we really need to reframe that. What felt like love bombing? Well, it wasn't really about falling in love. It was a strategy. Let's just call it what it was, a construction project.
Yeah, think of it like architecture, not chemistry. That incredible, exhilarating first phase, that was no accident. It was built with absolute precision. See, they weren't falling for you. They were installing you into their life, building this emotional infrastructure that, frankly, they would become completely dependent on.
So how exactly was this blueprint built? Well, while you were feeling so seen and so understood, something else was happening just beneath the surface. Every single vulnerability you shared, every insecurity you trusted them with, it was all being quietly cataloged. Not so they could understand you better, but so they could create a user manual for later, a complete guide to your deepest fears and your emotional triggers.
And this brings us to an absolutely crucial point. You were not targeted because you were weak. It was the opposite. You were targeted because you were strong. Your warmth, your empathy, that depth of emotion you have, those qualities made you a rich source of what psychologists call narcissistic supply. That's the validation and attention they desperately need just to function. You were chosen for your light because they needed it to manage their own inner darkness.
Inevitably, the dynamic shifts. It always does. The warmth starts to pull back, the connection feels like it's fraying, and this isn't random. This is the moment the trap is sprung. It's all driven by this deep, structural fear inside of them. And it's right here that the relationship stops being a partnership and turns into a performance. Not a performance of love, but one of survival.
This right here, this is the key that unlocks everything else. Real intimacy, the very thing you were offering them, becomes the greatest threat they can imagine. To be truly seen by you isn't just a little uncomfortable for them, it's terrifying. Why? Because it brings them way too close to their core fear. That underneath all that performance, there's just a profound emptiness.
And this is exactly why the relationship was always on a collision course. You were both operating from completely different blueprints. I mean, you were seeking genuine connection and intimacy. They were seeking regulation. They needed an external source to manage their own incredibly unstable sense of self. It was a fundamental mismatch from the very beginning.
And you have to understand this. The cruelty, the sudden withdrawal, the arguments out of nowhere, they weren't just attacks on you. They were desperate, protective maneuvers. It was all a performance of survival, designed to keep you from getting too close and seeing the truth of their own inner hollowness.
So once that deep fear of being seen really takes hold, the narcissist's main goal shifts. It becomes all about regaining control. And the most effective way they know how to do that? By manufacturing chaos. You see, stability and peace feel incredibly threatening to them, but chaos is a landscape they know how to navigate and, more importantly, dominate.
These are their tools of the trade, designed to keep you constantly off balance. Arguments will just erupt out of thin air. They'll suddenly go cold and withdraw all affection, with no explanation. They'll use the silent treatment as a weapon. And then, just when you feel like you're at your breaking point, you'll get a little bit of that warmth again. It creates this powerful, addictive cycle of confusion and relief that makes you so much easier for them to manage.
You know, a good way to think about it is this. A person who is struggling with deep internal chaos just cannot tolerate external peace. It doesn't compute. So, what do? They recreate their inner world on the outside. The drama, the disorganization, that feeling of constant crisis. It's a direct projection of their own disordered, fragmented self.
Okay, but understanding all of this isn't about staying focused on them. Not at all. It's about turning the focus back to where it belongs, on you. This is the reclamation phase.
Because the moment you start decoding their pattern, you start taking back your power. Clarity really is the antidote to all that confusion.
Let this one sink in for a minute. Every single criticism they ever leveled at you, you're too sensitive or you're too emotional, it wasn't a diagnosis of you. It was a confession. They were projecting their own internal state. And, on a deeper level, they were expressing envy for the very qualities in you that they could never, ever genuinely possess.
The truth is, the real damage probably wasn't in those loud, dramatic moments. No, the most insidious damage was in the quiet erosion of your trust in yourself. The gaslighting, the way you started constantly second-guessing your own reality, it was all designed to sever the connection to your own instincts, to make you feel like a stranger in your own mind. The real work of healing is about finding your way back home to yourself.
So, how do we start that practical work of reclamation? Well, one of the most powerful places to begin is with your language. It's about taking back control in the way you actually talk about your own feelings.
Now, notice this really simple but incredibly profound shift. The phrase, "you make me feel," actually hands them your power. It confirms for them that they have a button they can push to get a reaction. But when you shift to "I feel," you reclaim that power instantly. You are stating your own internal reality without making them the author of it. And really, this is so much more than just a clever little language trick. It's a foundational act of rebuilding yourself. It draws a boundary. It declares, "My emotional world belongs to me." And that small change is a massive step toward restoring trust in your own inner voice.
If you take only one thing away from our time together, please let it be this. The relationship didn't end because you failed. It ended because it was a system failure. Your authenticity, your needs, your very presence as a whole feeling person, it became a threat to a fragile system that simply could not handle that much reality.
So, decoding the pattern. That was the first step. It's the blueprint of the trap you've now escaped. But it is not the final chapter of your story. The most important question is always the one that comes next. Armed with this new clarity, and with the knowledge that the story they wrote about you was a complete lie, the power is now entirely in your hands. So, what will you build now?
If this resonated, you aren't alone. Subscribe to join this space, where we decode them together. I'll see you in the next one.